paths of circulation. And there are two principal pathways, the pulmonary circuit and the systemic circuit. Pulmonary circuit goes from the right ventricle to the pulmonary trunk, right and left pulmonary arteries, lobular branches, pulmonary arterioles, pulmonary capillaries, pulmonary venules and veins, back to the left atrium. Blood in the pulmonary arteries and arterioles is low in oxygen, high in carbon dioxide. Gas exchange occurs within the alveolar capillaries, and blood in the pulmonary venules and veins is rich in oxygen and carbon dioxide. Arteries away from the heart, veins towards the heart. In the systemic circulation, the oxygen-rich blood moves from the left atrium to the left ventricle. Contraction of the left ventricle sends blood into the systemic circuit. That starts at the aorta, then all the arteries and arterioles leading to body tissues, through systemic capillaries, back to systemic venules, veins, until finally returning to the right atrium. Some of this involves osmosis, so there's a high osmotic pressure in the interstitial fluid that draws water out of alveoli. The aorta is the largest artery in the body. It supplies blood to all the systemic arteries. I am not going to walk you through each one of these branches of the aorta, but they are things that you should know, you should be reading about, and should be familiar with many of the larger ones. I also will not walk you through each one of these major vessels, but they are important. The superior vena cava, the aorta, and the pulmonary trunk in particular. There are lots of branches coming off the abdominal aorta, feeding things like the stomach, liver, pancreas, kidneys, many others. In the arteries in the brain, head, and neck, important ones would include the subclavian and the common carotid artery. Again, you're going to need to be familiar with these. In the brain, we have the cerebral arterial circle, traditionally called the circle of Willis. That joins the carotid and vertebral artery systems. They supply blood to the brain. Their arrangement provides for alternate pathways to reach the brain. Cerebral arteries emerge from the circle and supply blood to brain tissues. Upper limb and shoulder start with the subclavian artery. In the abdominal walls, the subclavian artery and the thoracic aorta are very important. Abdominal aorta is going to divide into the common iliac artery, and then the common iliac artery will divide into the internal and external. The internal iliac artery supplies blood to the pelvis and the gluteus area. External iliac arteries provide blood to the lower limbs. Again, I went through these quickly. I'm not saying they're not important. I just don't think lecturing them to you is a good way to teach it. So you should get into your book, dig into these arteries, and we'll do some more in the lab.